With Darren Nichols and Mick Steele was Jack Wilms. He was serving 16 months for car fraud.
I mean, I know all along, Jack, if he was up for anything, Jack would have been his second man, because him and Jack were like dead pally. Jack loved Mick. Jack would do anything for Mick. Jack really admired him, you know, looked up to him. Me and Mick Steele started smuggling cannabis across the channel. We get the ferry, we go across overnight, we get there in the morning, we buy the drugs, we do the deal. I'd go off and rent a car, bring the car back, drugs were put in the boot. I'd drive us all the way back to Blankenberg in Belgium. We wait for sort of dusk, just like early evening, 5 or 6 o'clock time, and we get the drugs down on the beach. We contact Mick, who's come over in a boat. The drugs go in the boat, the drugs go off to England. When Mick got back to England, Jack Wilms would be waiting for him. He would take the drugs off him and go and hide the drugs. Mick would go back to sea, re-land somewhere else, been fishing, prove otherwise.
Yet another inmate at Hoseley Bay Prison was one of the murder victims, Pat Tate. He was in the same block as Darren Nichols, Mick Steele and Jack Wilms.
Whilst inside, Pat supplied cannabis to people who wanted it, and steroids. He used to get it brought in on visits, sneaked in. I mean, people never really searched Pat. He was too big.
People do drugs in prison. I mean, things are so easy to get in there. And he got hooked on smack in there, heroin. When he wasn't doing any drugs at all, he was just a lovable rogue, and he'd like, if he sold you a car and there was something wrong with it, that was down to you, because everybody knew that that's the way Pat was, you know, and it's your tough if he sells you the car and it's wrong. But he got away with it because he was so lovable.
Come on, Pat, let's have a smile.
Pat Tate, along with Tony Tucker and Craig Rolfe, the 3 victims of the Range Rover murders, were major drug dealers in Essex.
When he got into the drugs, Pat just got into the underworld, just wanting to earn so much money and to be like the mafia, I suppose.
Tate and Tucker and Rolfe, they had the ability and the outlets in the Essex Police District and probably further afield in the East End of London to distribute drugs. And so the 2 factions, if you like, found common ground with each other. Steele had the ability to import the drug, and Tate and his associates had the ability to distribute it.
Tucker, Tate and Rolfe were more Tucker and Tate. Rolfe was just sort of, I suppose, the equivalent of me with Steele. He was just their boy. Everyone knew them as violent, and when they were selling drugs, they were too loud, too high profile, and they didn't care. If anyone made any comments, they used to just beat them up, and that concerned Mick Steele, who I worked for, because they were attracting too much of attention, and it was only a matter of time before they attracted the attention onto us and got us nicked. When we went smuggling for the 3rd time, everything went wrong from the start.
Michael Steele had brought over a consignment of cannabis in a boat from Holland, landing on the Essex coast. But the cannabis was said to have been of a very bad quality, and there were soon complaints from customers and dealers who demanded their money back. Patrick Tate in particular was seething with anger about the problems with the cannabis.
Pat Tate had borrowed 40,000 off some gangsters and promised them 50,000 back. Once Pat didn't get any profit because the drugs were bad, he needed something to tell the gangsters. He devised a little story where he said, "We haven't got any money back. Mick Steele, the bastard, hasn't paid us," he said. And furthermore, he said, "If he doesn't pay us, I'll kneel him down and shoot him in front of you." But Tate, with a big mouth, told too many people, and it got back to Mick. I knew that's when Mick decided to set him up and kill him.
I am angry with him for getting involved in the drugs. He's not just hurting himself, he's hurt everyone around him. It should never have happened. Never in a million years. No one deserves to die, especially the barbaric way they did.
I decided I wouldn't smuggle anymore after the murders, and I told Mick Steele I no longer wanted to smuggle, but I was quite happy to purchase drugs just for my friends and that, you know? and never had nothing to do with smuggling, because I don't know if it was my own personal fears, and they realised I'm a weakling, but they got more friendly towards me, wanting to do things with me, like wanting to go flying. Like Mick offered to take me flying and was egging me on to come flying. And he was betting me that I couldn't identify my town for where I lived from an aeroplane and things like that. And I said, of course I could. And then when he turned up for me to go flying, he had Jack with him. And he says, right, Jack can sit in the back. And I thought, there's no fucking way I'm going up in an aeroplane with those two.
The men arrived at intervals during the day at Chelmsford Magistrates Court. First to arrive was Michael Steele, aged 53, from Great Bentley. His application for bail was turned down by magistrates. Next was Jack Wones, aged 35, from Brockford in Suffolk. His bail application was also turned down. There was no bail application for Darren Nichols.
The three were all arrested for drug offences, but within 3 days, on May the 16th, 1996, Steele and Wones were charged with murder. Darren Nichols had turned supergrass. He was kept out of the prison system, but detained in isolation in a police cell.
If I hadn't grasped, without a doubt, I would be dead. If I had kept my mouth shut, gone into the prison system, I would have died in prison. It's not that I think I would have died. I would have died. I would not be here now. I would be dead. They would have found some 18-year-old who wanted to earn half ounce of dope, who would have stabbed me in the showers, mate. I've been in prison. I've been on remand. You upset someone, you may only end up with 50 stitches. You may end up a bit worse off than that. They're always at it, and the worst ones of all is someone who thinks you're a grass. They'll catch you. They all have a go. They all want to stick the knife in together.
Must have been about midnight. Got a phone call from Darren. All he said was, do you want to be with me? I said, well, yeah, of course I do. I mean, why? What's happened? He wouldn't tell me anything, about what was going on. He just kept repeating, do you want to be with me? Do you want to be with me? Pack a few things in a bag, just an overnight bag for you and the kids. Well, I just wanted to know why and, what was happening. He said, I can't talk, I can't tell you anything. Just do as I ask and it'll be all right. So, I did as he said, packed a bag. At the time I thought, probably not coming back here. I don't know how I knew that I wouldn't be going back, but I just knew I wouldn't be going back. Police turned up sometime later. Children were asleep in bed. So I had to lift them out of bed and put them in the back of a car. Can't remember what I told them. Can't remember what I said about where we were going or why. But they were so sleepy, they didn't seem to take much notice.
A lot of the reason why I became the witness was because of my wife. It just dawned on me that I didn't really want to be away from her, like 10 years or whatever I was going to get. It took having to be locked up in a cell again for me to think that. So many different things went through my mind. It was the most difficult decision I think I ever made, was deciding to be the witness.
Comes on the telly, and they brought this man out of one of them police vans with a blanket over his head. Though I couldn't see him, I knew it was my boy. I knew it was my boy. I just know that he couldn't do a thing like that. What reason would he have? My son wouldn't do that. I just know in my heart here, I know what our children have done and what they ain't done. I know when they're lying and when they're not lying, like all mothers do, don't they?
With Darren Nichols on remand awaiting the murder trial, his wife and children were moved by police into a safe house.
We were like prisoners. We couldn't go out. We had to rely on this policewoman to take me to the shops. And some days, she didn't turn up. We were just sat there in the house with a television on one sofa. My family weren't allowed to visit. Well, they couldn't. They didn't know where I was. I was scared. I didn't know what was going on. I had panic buttons and alarms all over the place, you know.
I was locked in an high security unit in Bedford at the time, but they shut it down and they turned it into a unit from Mara Hindley, and I got moved to the Isle of Wight, the old RIA unit, so I couldn't do anything. My wife's having breakdowns on the phone, and all I can do was sit there, and it got to the point where she said, if you don't come home in a week's time, I'm leaving you, and I'm going back to Essex.
They told me that we were in danger. They said that Mick and Jack had a lot of contacts in the underworld. Very dangerous people. They did tell me about the danger that we were in. And I said, well, at one point, I said, I want to go home. She said, you can't go home. If you do that, you'd be putting your children in danger. And then they could be taken into care. They could be taken away from you. So, that was that. I stayed put.
There needs to be a judgment involved with each case as to whether you go down this very expensive path of giving people fresh identities and relocating them. My experience is that these people are expected to live very frugally and eventually to be self-sufficient in their lifestyle.
They take your national insurance number away, they get rid of your driving licence, all your bank details are erased, they just vanish you. And if I tell you my name's Fred Bloggs, you believe me, you don't say, well, let me see your driving licence, Fred. I mean, I've got no documentation to say I'm someone different. I mean, I'm only acting as someone new. I'm not actually someone new until I'm sentenced.
With the murder trial over, and after a year in custody, Darren Nichols is now out on police bail. As a supergrass, he's had to confess to all his previous crimes and will soon face sentencing himself for drug smuggling, possession of 10 kilos of cannabis, and supplying a firearm.
After my sentence, I should get, I suppose, an identity. I should get a driving licence, a passport, a national insurance number, help to open a bank account, because even as a fresh person with all of these things, you won't get a bank account because you've got no history, no previousness.
Jack Wombs has now served 2.5 years of his life sentence. His leave to appeal will be heard in the High Court in 2 months.
Not a shred of evidence. Oh, there wasn't there a footprint in the snow, size 7. And was Jack 11? 12, yeah.
In the court, Darren Nichols saying that he'd dropped Jack off on the left-hand side of the road. He just stopped and he'd let him get out there, and Jack had to walk across the road to go down this lane, didn't he?
He didn't know if he went down the road left, that he went right, that he didn't know if he reversed in, turned round, spun round, did he?
He gets caught with 10 kilos, he's going to make a story. He's looking at 5 years.
I just can't see how he can get on with his life. I mean, I couldn't, like, to do what he's done, then just live a normal life. Mind you, I suppose, like, the money that he's got will probably give him life a luxury, won't it? I wouldn't be surprised if he's probably abroad somewhere, or if he's in this country, probably, my own opinion, is probably up north or Devon somewhere.
I've heard that I'm living in Spain in a villa and I'm being looked after by the police. I've heard other ones. I'm now in South Africa and I've got a bit of a suntan. And they think, you know, I'm definitely abroad. No one knows actually, do they? I mean, all they would do is speculate. The reality is nothing like that at all. They never give you a villa abroad or help you move. I mean, plus the fact is that most countries won't take you in because you are a criminal. Everything's a constant lie. You know it is. It's like I haven't got a job, you know. And I've been offered a few silly jobs, but I can't take them. I mean, you get the basic dole money, in my case, which is about £48 a week, and they find you somewhere to live, which they rent, and then you're expected to get on with your life.